Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to
the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
for all. Okay. All right. If you've had a chance to look at the minutes, I didn't see anything that was a problem. Everything looked good to me. Anybody else?
It looked good to me.
Corrections or additions, omissions?
No
If-
corrections here.
Pardon me?
No corrections here.
Okay. Can we have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second. Massimo.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Okay, I do not have anything to report other than that I thought that the ribbon cutting was terrific. And if those of you who haven't yet been, I would suggest you go and try our newest restaurant. It's really very, very nice.
Mhm.
Okay. I want to get on because we have a lot to cover tonight. So, Rena, do you want to take
Yeah.
a
Yes, the first thing we're going to do is to have a briefing from Stantec. We have Maggie Connor and Gary Sorge on. They're a part of our Stantec team. Maggie's been leading the effort for quite some time now, and everybody else has been very supportive. They're going to do a briefing of the document. If you saw your email today, and I apologize that it came out later this afternoon, but we've been making edits and changes and so forth for the past month and up until today, with some updated information. So what you had in your email box, and you're going to see some stuff on the screen anyway, so if you haven't had time to look at it, is a final draft. It's not the final report. There will be some edits that are grammatical. We have a few things flagged that have to be edited. We have a couple of charts that have to be finalized. But other than that, the document is about 98 to 99% final. It is the phase 1 study. There is a phase after this that you'll be hearing about. There's a lot of information both in the study document and in the appendices. And in the appendices, we'll run down what's in there, but there's a specific section that I think this commission needs to pay attention to. You should pay attention to all of it, but especially the economic analytics that associate with what we're talking about in terms of a vision and a development potential development build out over time. What does it mean? What kind of investment needs to be made in infrastructure in order to unlock return? And what is the upside of that return in terms of grand list growth, jobs, and other benefits to the community? Okay, so there is a summary of that in the study document, but the backup information and the logic behind some of the numbers you'll see in the full document are contained there. The other thing that's actually very relevant and we'll talk about probably today are some of the zoning regulations. Many of you remember that back in 2018, some of you were still involved here or other ways in town, there was a rezoning of the mall into a mixed-use design district. So that zoning has been very helpful. It helped to enable the market rate housing to the front of the mall property. It also helped to make leasing a little smoother so that uses could go in and out of the mall without a lot of extra process. But there is a need based on this vision and the potential to unlock development, real estate, jobs, etc., to forward some additional zoning regulation changes. And there's a summary in the document, and then there's a zoning memo attached to that. And it's really important that we get to that point with our Planning and Zoning Commission soon, because those kinds of changes help hold value at a very difficult time. Zoning that allows for certain kinds of uses and flexibilities and things has value once it's adopted. So it not only does it tell the development community what the town community would reasonably support, et cetera, what the parameters of development and the vision is, it does all of that, which is really important, but it also helps us to hold values. So we'll be talking about all of these things tonight. There will be additional meetings. So I just want to address process for tonight. We're going to get a briefing primarily from Maggie and with some color from Gary and maybe some context if needed from me. We've set aside a half hour on the agenda. There may be a few pauses that they take just to check in with you as commissioners to see if you have some questions. And to Bill Chin and to the commission here, there are a few attendees, it seems, in the attendee list. I don't know who they are, but they may have some questions. There is a public portion of the agenda at the end of the agenda. If there are some questions that relate to the mall present briefing that the commission had or any other matter we discussed, we can take it up then. There will be a full community meeting. It will be an in-person meeting. We're working with First Selectman Tesoro to schedule that for after March 10th, after the budget process is done, so that we can have the best attendance from elected officials, from the community members and others that are interested. Then there will be another stop along the way for it to go to planning and zoning, and that will also be public. Once the study document is in final report form over the next week or so with all the edits and tables and stuff filled out, that will get posted to our page. You know, we have a study page. It will get put on the website. We will distribute it to key folks, and potentially beyond that, the community, there will be an announcement, you know, to the community that it's available and so forth. So that is all coming. I want to make you aware of it. This briefing is for you as Economic and Community Development Commissioners to have insight even ahead of those meetings so that you can digest the economic development impact, the community development impact, and how you might support this vision and these next steps going forward. Okay?
Mhm.
So if there's no questions for me at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Maggie. And we've looked at this document so many times. It's so hard. So I can't wait to see how you've boiled it down to 30 minutes, but we're going to give it a shot.
Well,
Okay?
and Rena, only slight change of plan. We are going to flip through the whole document because I think
Okay.
there's a lot. I'm going to
Perfect.
do it quickly.
Whatever works for you. And I know you'll stop on key pages.
Yeah.
And again, this is a touch point. This is not for you to feel like you have to digest and get every question answered here. Okay?
And I know that we're probably also dealing with folks that have joined at different times within this movie. So I'm going to try to be comprehensive without lagging too much. So if I can share my screen, and if everybody could tell me if they could see that.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so just so you know, when I do that, I can't see your faces. So if you need to interrupt me, you may just need to yell at me, if that makes sense. Okay, so as Rena said, this is a final draft. We are still, kind of dotting I's and crossing T's. But this is probably exactly what Rena has sent to you guys this evening. And I think just a couple of points of how the document is set up. First, a letter from the first selectman. And then as we get to the table of contents, this is more just to frame it for you. We start with an introduction that is a little bit of an executive summary without a lot of the key detail. We then move to community engagement and talk about the community engagement process first. I think it's very important because it's one of the underpinnings of this whole effort, is really understanding what this vision is from a community perspective. But marrying that with section 3, which is the market feasibility. So it's good to know what the vision is, but also how can we really make that work economically, financially, and function for the town in terms of long-term economic sustainability. Section 4 is called the study area and the potential, which is sort of our way of documenting not only the existing conditions and challenges that exist within the study area, but also identifying some of those opportunities. We then move to a vision for the future, which is the basis of kind of the impact analysis that you'll see, which comes in the last chapter, which really talks about some of those implementation steps and what the impact would be for the town on this kind of vision. And then, as Rena described, there are a series of appendices in this document, which I'll show you later, but have a lot of the technical backup for everything that is stated in this document. So moving right along, I think Rena probably framed this better than I could ever hope to, which is really, the whole underpinning of this is that this is a very important district, really, a very important part of Trumbull in terms of, the significance from an economic standpoint, but also what we heard from the community, just the sort of nostalgia and memory of how important, the mall and growing up here and seeing that as a center for commerce and where people met and gathered. And this idea of thinking about a vision for this place that sort of rebirths that, right? That really gets this to function again as a center of life for the town of Trumbull. And so that was kind of the big picture, and also a goal of this study was to pull those things together. The area that we're looking at, just again to refresh memories, is really running from Madison Avenue to Main Street, just north of the Trumbull-Bridgeport line up to the Merritt Parkway. So we're sort of looking at that whole area and understanding how we access it, how we can leverage and find opportunities for development within it, and how we can improve and overcome some of the challenges that exist there. The opportunity here, and I'll keep coming back to this again, is how do we create economic value and create community value? I think, we could do one or the other, and if we're not doing them together, we don't see that as a success for this project. So we're really trying to hold those two things together at the same time. And then the vision is, how do we turn this into a place that people want to spend more time, where they are making plans for their whole family. It's a multi-generational thing. It's bringing people from all over the town and the region, not just to shop, but to, to sort of do all aspects of life: work, live, play, recreate, dine, etc. And all of that will build up to this. But the idea is that by working through this whole process and enabling the development and unlocking the potential of this property, you could end up with a vision such as this, which really seeks to create this new, vibrant, mixed-use district for the town of Trumbull. And the whole idea is that this happens at the same time that it continues to support, bolster, and benefit the mall itself. So not done in defiance of, but rather in support of throughout this whole process. Again, we've talked a bit about how the document is laid out, so I won't belabor that. But as we move into community engagement and understanding the vision and concerns that we heard from the community, Rena talked a bit about the process and the number of community meetings that we had. We also had a whole series of stakeholder interviews throughout this process, talking to local developers, commercial brokers, current mall tenants, local government leaders, local businesses, property owners, investors, all of the people that are either already doing business in this area or could potentially do business in this area. And then we did this sort of throughout the process. So the idea is you don't meet with people once, but you meet with them at critical points along this timeline so that they're not only feeding into the information that supports this whole study, but also reacting to ideas as they emerge. As Rena indicated, we are really kind of at the very end here of phase one. We've just finished this step right here, which is really looking at the implementation strategy where we finalized, we're in the process of finalizing this study. The next step is to really pursue the adoption of the zoning regulations and approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then hopefully looking to have this appended to the POCD update. And so that it is memorialized and crystallized there. And then phase two, we're calling going to market, which is really about building on this momentum, seeking partnerships and investment. And that's really seeking out developers, tenants, new businesses, people to come and invest in this district.
If I can just give one, I just want to mention that we have already started to go to market, but we're going to go full bore to the marketplace over this next phase. And then I just wanted to mention for those folks who might not know what the POCD is, that's our Plan of Conservation and Development, which Rob Labrandy is the lead staff on with a team. And that will be finalized this spring. And to Maggie's point, we're going to be seeking that it get appended to that and serve as the master plan for this part, this area of town. Sorry, Mag. And if you are not commenting, can you put yourself on mute? Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. All of this, there's, in the appendix, we sort of have detailed notes of key public meetings and feedback. But as a synthesized summary of it here, first of all, in this circle, in this gray oval shape, are the list of uses that came out of that process that the community was supportive of seeing on this site, which range from a lot of things: hotel, senior living, gathering space, community, sports and recreation, grocery, small retail, large retail. In other words, all of the things that sort of impact the daily life of people. I think the community visioning takeaways were this sort of combined understanding that there's a lot of opportunity at the mall, but right now it's maybe not living up to people's expectation. There's a lack of investment. There's been a kind of deferred maintenance over time. It's impacting public perception. There have been some, vacancies more recently, like the Lord and Taylor box being vacant for a period of time. Some of these things have just created maybe a slightly negative perception in the market and in the community. And so I think a real concern about how can we address those over time? How can this, study address that? How can some early actions address that? And ultimately accommodate something new and really see this transformation from something that was very much, a 20th century shopping center into something that is suited for the 21st century. And then this is just these are some images of what that might look like from what we heard from the community. As we get into the market feasibility, in this section, we looked at a number of things. First of all, trying to understand the town of Trumbull and how it is positioned within this region. Long story short, there's a high level of education in the population of Trumbull. There's, a strong household income in this area. There's a lot of spending power. And all of this, really kind of supports the fact that the retail market is fairly strong here. We heard that pretty loudly and clearly from our retail consultant, and that it isn't just serving the town of Trumbull, but this larger region considered the market trade area. At the end of the day, the mall has somewhat recovered from COVID. They see about 500,000 annual visitors over the past few years, which is still a pretty strong showing, especially in an era when, malls in a lot of places aren't doing so well. So So that really kind of indicated a sense that the retail market is reasonably strong here, and that over time there may, over the next couple of years, that there would be the potential for another 220,000 or so square feet of different kinds of retail. So everything from maybe specialty grocer, food purveyor, and some other kind of anchor like that. The idea that there's quite a bit of market for restaurants and other kinds of specialty food, and then all of the other retail that supports that. And the idea is that that could be a mix of, filling in some vacancies in the mall, but also new construction outside of it. We looked into recreation. There's been a lot of movement just in commercial locations for sort of sport as entertainment, pickleball and duck pin bowling and like all of these things that, are both entertainment and also recreative. And there are opportunities for that here. We understand that within the area that there aren't a lot of hotels that are really serving this town. There is the Marriott Shelton. We heard kind of mixed reviews. We understand that there isn't currently a hotel in Bridgeport. So there is an opportunity here specifically for what we call a limited service hotel, which would be about 100 beds. And the idea is that it doesn't have all of its own services within it. Like it doesn't have its own restaurant. But instead can actually support any kind of commercial that happens within this district. And that's a really good supportive use because it brings in additional customers. We looked a bit at medical office. There are quite a few systems that are pretty competitive in this area. You're reasonably well served. One of the things that we've been seeing is that, this trend in the market toward outpatient serving facilities. We've heard about Hartford Healthcare having several options, a surgery center, urgent care clinic, other kinds of specialty care centers. So there is the interesting thing that we found is that a hospital system could easily lease 50 to 60,000 square feet for medical office space and for other kinds of services. So they do pay very competitive rents. So that's an opportunity here. And one of the things that we had identified is, sort of ask the question, could the vacant Lord and Taylor be an opportunity for that? So we can obviously that takes a lot of, partnerships and coordination over time, but, just trying to think about where that could fit easily on site. Probably one of the maybe biggest markets right now is in active adult housing, which is age restricted 55 plus. We certainly have everywhere an aging population. And, Trumbull is a place that has historically been mostly single family housing. And so the idea that you can build some diversity into your housing stock here and provide options for people who are empty nesters, who are maybe not looking to maintain and manage the same amount of square feet they have for the past 30 years. There's a real opportunity to see that kind of housing on this site. The other advantage, of course, is that you, again, are, contributing to this sort of walkable, vibrant district. Things like, the restaurants and shops are great for that age group. The other thing is that it can also provide an opportunity for people to vacate their family, to move out of their family houses, which would help make more available on the market for new residents in Trumbull. And then we just observed too that the low vacancy rate in new developments like 10 Trumbull, Woodside, the Royce residences mainly sort of indicate just a pent-up demand in general for housing here. And then finally, probably the most interesting, but also sometimes harder to get is the research innovation sector. Office, obviously, sort of since COVID and this kind of, evolving way in which we work, straight office has been a kind of soft market, but research and innovation, especially if you can find partnerships with any of the local universities, and Rena can even jump in on some of the work they've been doing about creating this ecosystem around, R&D and technology here. And it seems like there's some really exciting things happening in Trumbull.
Yes, we've called out in the study just a few of those companies that exist here, but I think that the community probably doesn't have a real handle on what exists here. And we are constantly working to grow and attract new types of innovative companies. And one of the things that First Selectman Tesoro and I have been working on, and she's on here somewhere on our panel, is really talking about convening these folks so that they know one another and starting to really build, not a heavy lift convening where they're burdened by a monthly meeting or something, but just a conversation to let everybody know who everybody is and to talk about some of the things going on in the area. I mean, as we start to show who's here and their success in getting a good workforce here and having a good experience and so forth, that helps us to attract more. So stay tuned. And I do know, and I didn't digest it fully today, but I know I saw out that the governor is going to be putting some additional money into, more startup R&D types of businesses. And there may be opportunities for us to leverage some of that over time for this ecosystem. To be continued.
Thank you, Rena. So what's interesting is we have here, a similar sort of grouping of what uses are supported by the market. So if you remember what we saw from the community perspective, you'll see a lot of similar things showing up in what is market viable. And so, for us, we really think about this as the program that we held in our minds as we looked at development capacity on site, because this is a pretty robust list, which is great. It's nice when these things intersect. And you really start to think about how to build up a district with things that both the community supports and the market supports as well. The next section, do you want me to pause, Rena? Just, are there any questions before
Is everybody good to keep going? Hearing nothing, seeing no hands, we'll just keep going. Massimo, did you have something?
No, we're good to keep going. I think that's a
Thank
lot
you.
of review for a lot of us.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so this next section, I'm also not going to spend too much time on this because this is really our evaluation of existing conditions. And I think for the most part, this is where we prove that we've heard you and we've sort of documented what you've told us. A couple of things that I think are interesting. One of the big challenges here is just the ownership pattern in this area. Sort of anything kind of outside of this is generally either privately held or small individual LLCs. But everything within the blue is owned by NAMDAR. It was part of the acquisition a couple of years ago. In yellow, that is property that is still retained by the previous small owner, URW. So here at the Residence of Maine and over here on Madison Avenue, still one parcel. These are two town-owned parcels. But then you also have a couple of locations where the land underneath is owned by one entity and the structures built on top of them are owned by another entity. So it just adds to just these layers of complexity that we found here. Among those layers of complexity include just generally some of the lease constraints that exist between specifically the anchor users and some of those unique owners and the mall ownership. And so what we've done here, and you guys will have some time obviously to look through this in greater detail, but is summarized some of the key leases for, Target, Hudson Bay, which is the Lord and Taylor box owner, JCPenney, Macy's, LA Fitness, Residences on Main. They all have different relationships with the land holdings. And what's interesting about that are really two things that I encourage you to take a look at, which is first, understanding these lease terms and for how long they continue to participate here. So there's some of these even go back as far as, 1985, 1993. So it's sort of a real eye opener too for how long people have been here and investing in your community, but then how long they still have to go. Another interesting column are sort of these prohibitive uses. These are things that are outlined in the lease, and they require, a lot of this requires kind of approval from those tenants before they can move forward. So I think it's just important to understand when we start talking about the development landscape moving forward, just having all of this information easily at hand so that it can be sort of daylighted and communicated. And then the final thing, of course, are parking terms, because parking is going to continue to be, I'm sure, a hot topic here, especially as development continues to happen. We looked at the strengths and challenges of development that exist here, everything from the sort of positives of things that have been happening, like the residences, the opportunities for connections between the indoor of the mall and the outdoor of the mall, some of which has started to try to happen around the food court, but could certainly be better. We've also seen some commercial development happening, some conversions happening on Main Street, which can be really compatible and I think are a good sign. Some of the weaknesses just include sort of visibility of the mall, especially from the Main and Madison, from the entry roads, the character of the entry roads, the ongoing, like I said, some deferred maintenance and just upkeep around the mall are some concerns. Utilities and infrastructure, generally well served. There's some issues with, flooding or just it being wet and soggy. You've got the Horse Tavern Brook that is culverted under the site. And so that causes some issues periodically when you have, I think, really rainy seasons. There's some functional things in the mall itself, I think. And then the major sanitary and sewer infrastructure does run right under the property, which doesn't have to be an issue, but it is a constraint as we think about development in terms of where and how, just to be sensitive to those easements. So we've documented where those exist. The flooding doesn't actually, the quote unquote flood zone on the site doesn't hold any, there are no development restrictions with it. It's more of a, just so you know. And one of the things that we'll talk about later is the potential to maybe daylight part of the Horse Tavern Brook, which can help handle some of the stormwater. Related to circulation, this is a lot of documentation of where you're missing some sidewalks, pedestrian and bicycle capabilities. We talked already about the entries and the opportunities there, and I think we'll continue to go through that. And then finally, we wrapped up just documenting where parking currently exists on site, and you'll see very quickly why this is important to understand. There are a couple of surface lots that are very much underutilized, and they can be, essentially your infill opportunities looking forward. So moving into the vision, this idea that we're really trying to see how to transform this over time into a vibrant mixed-use district. And that is important, not just because it would be nice to have, but I think really understanding the importance of the mall in particular in this area, in terms of the, sort of the tax income that you can get from this, the value that puts on your grand list. And how do we protect this asset for the town of Trumbull? So much of this is about not only shoring this up in the near and midterm, but thinking long-term how to really continue to position this for future success so that it can continue to grow, adapt, and change with the times and be a wonderful asset for the town.
So one quick note there, I wanted to draw the commission's attention to. The two charts that we're completing, one was when you saw the leasing terms. We have a few little details to add to that chart, some additional color and restriction or terms. And then Maggie and I, working on a attachment for the appendices that really talks about what's happened with the value of the mall property from 2015 to present. So that we can see what properties, because there's multiple parcels, where were they valued at in 2015? what kinds of value drops have happened and why. We've had appeals, and these are not $1 million or $2 million difference. These are tens of millions of dollars that have been challenged on values, et cetera. So we're going to append that because it's very important, we believe, in First Selectman Tesoro, if you have anything to add, but we discussed this extensively, so we're working through that. But we just want to make sure that we have that chart detailed and accurate. There's a lot of moving parts, and trying to synthesize that information is a bit of a challenge, but we're going to get it there, and it's going to be one of the things that you will see in the future. Go ahead, Max. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Rena. That's great. Hold on. Sorry, I lost my clicker. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, we don't have to wait 15, 20 years for all of this to happen. Certainly the work can start today. So we've identified some early action things like refreshing the entrances, painting facades, getting rid of ghost signs, improving outdoor spaces. Some of that just, my mom used to describe it as like the cheap and cheerful, upkeep items that can exist, today and can start to, I think unravel some of those negative perceptions just by, a little bit of attention to the site itself. And we've identified a bunch of different opportunities across the district that could play into that. One of the big things, I think, to really set this up for success also has to do with these intersection and entry improvements, both at Main and at Madison. I think there's a real opportunity here to do a couple of things. First of all, just to improve those intersections at the entry so you really feel like the district starts at those streets. And then, for example, the entry from Main is an incredibly wide road now. You can see in this upper picture, there's a lot of land taken up for roads that are way over serving the traffic estimates that exist here. And that land could be used for things that have a much better community benefit. So I think it's worthwhile, thinking of that here at Main in specific, but also over at Madison, the opportunity exists to really think differently about the alignment of that entry coming in from Madison. Right now it dips down and it takes up a lot of land and it leaves room for parking. What we envision is if you can bring that straight in, bring that drive straight in, you actually unlock a development parcel that is a nice chunk of land. You get really good acreage there that could be developed in short order. So, this idea that by making some small improvements to the infrastructure that you can actually unlock even more developable property, I think is pretty exciting, especially, in a town in the Northeast where land is not endless, right? You're getting to the point where in order to find new property, you have to revitalize places like this. And then finally, you guys probably remember this from the presentation that we gave last year, which is this idea of building incrementally. This is not going to change over time, but there is the opportunity with each kind of new development on site to continue to build out part of this vision. So starting first with these underutilized parking areas that exist on the property and still trying to be sensitive, obviously, to the existing anchors that are there that want to stay in business and need access to easy parking. Starting first with what we're calling Development Area 1. Things don't have to happen in this order, but we're showing in order to just illustrate the idea of incrementally developing this, but this could happen at any place on this site. But starting first with Development Area 1, the idea that we could get housing backing up to an existing neighborhood, which is a way to kind of do a built buffer to the existing neighborhoods to sort of sensitively reinforce their relationship to the mall property. This illustrates the idea of a new anchor that could be, grocery, could be a food purveyor, could be another kind of retail anchor that could exist here. And then the central feature of this development area would be a new plaza or public square. The idea that you could really reframe the entry to this northwest part of the mall with a programmable public space that could, that could really celebrate a new facade to that edge of the mall. And so looking at how it currently exists, where you have unused parking, you have crumbling asphalt, you have no landscaping, there's old signage on the mall. I mean, you can see a lot of potential for how this could transform. So if we look at what the plaza could look like there and the transformation of that space with new signage, facade improvements, programmable space, outdoor dining, and then this idea of bringing that entry road right here, almost like a kind of main street for a district. Moving on to development area number 2, it's really kind of a continuation of 1 in terms of this active adult housing. So this new parcel that is created by the realignment of the Madison entry can be another place for like a second phase of active adult housing, with the idea of maybe their management building could be along Madison Avenue and serve as a little, as like a sweet little address to that road. You can incorporate things like community gardens and other kinds of open space and amenity areas into this kind of development.
Mag, I think
Yeah.
we have to go, we have
Oh,
about
gotta go
5
faster. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I want to get to the most important part, which is what does this mean?
All
Don't
right.
don't jump entirely over everything. That's not what I meant.
No,
but
that's okay. I was just
give you
gonna
a
get to
little less
this.
detail. Yeah.
We could do the kind of, sorry. Thank you, Rena.
Say sorry.
I get too excited. It's so fun to talk about. So anyway, so fast forward, assume this is all built. I think I described a little bit of this early. We talked about limited use hotel that could exist along this entry from Main Street, where the LA Fitness currently exists. We were talking about innovation and research over time could be there. That's a pretty good size parcel. So the idea is that this slowly begins to add more and more uses. And you can see here in the lower right-hand corner, a roll-up summary of all the development totals. And really at the end of the day, we're talking about another 1 million plus square feet of development that could exist on this site. With improved outdoor amenities, with greenway and trails. And then what we've done is we sort of looked at if the town adopts this plan, how do you begin to manage it? And we've just done a series of regulating plans that really try to protect where these they're not exactly public rights of way because they're on private property, but where these easements can exist to protect the drives, and then where where we've defined development parcels. We've looked at the quality of open space and the kinds of things that could be contained in it, how you can handle stormwater in some of these places. And then finally, a land use plan that looks at, mixed use versus where active adult housing could happen. And the idea is that could make it easier for your zoning officials to really evaluate any kind of proposal that comes in here in the future. And so then we move into this implementation and economic impact. And the idea is that we can look at what does this mean for the town of Trumbull and how do we get there? And so for us, we took an approach of really understanding, what are some of the infrastructure costs that unlock these development parcels? What is the cost of that? And then what is the income that results? So, looking at the different development areas, I sort of went into detail on development area 1, 2, and 3, but we've also identified, 4, 5, and 6, and you can kind of see here again in a chart where how the uses and the square footages, unfold over time. And then what we've done is we actually went and did some sort of gross estimation of what it would cost to do things like, if we look at development area 1, install these plazas, look at some stormwater facilities, the realignment of some of these roads, and also Gary will be the first one to jump in and say this isn't just the aesthetic stuff that happens on the ground, but also the underground works that need to happen, like getting sewer lines to the places where they need to be, making sure they're at capacity, getting all the other utilities lined up, so all of that is kind of embedded in the costs that exist here. So if you look at all that infrastructure investment, we're talking just under $20 million that would need to be put in to make that happen. Again, this happens over time and by phase. And so what we've done here is we've included we've included this economic analysis that looks, development area by development area, how much program you're adding, including how many dwelling units, what is the infrastructure cost at each step, what kind of investment value does that indicate? And then what would be the sort of income to the town based on that? So both in terms of one-time fees, for permitting and the annualized property tax revenue here. We also have looked, and you'll see this in the appendix when you get to that, at the, how many construction jobs would be anticipated from that amount of development, and then how many permanent jobs from the uses indicated.
So I just want to pause for a moment and say this
Sure.
information is critical. And as we both mentioned now, in the appendices, you will see the full economic analytics that associate and back up all of this. But this is very important, and the first selectman's on too. On January 7th, we had a meeting of our Trumbull legislative delegation. We've had some subsequent discussions. There are many malls around the state that are looking for support as they look to reinvent. So there's a discussion underway, and it may take some time, but it is underway, of public-private partnership to unleash some of this real estate. The infrastructure costs are significant, but the return is much more significant. So having this data in place that we can go to the state and say, look, here's where we're going first. Here's our approximate cost. Here's the return. Here are the jobs. We're not backing into trying to figure out all of this while we're making an ask. We have the details. This is very important to moving forward and to lining up some public investment, potentially public investment, for some of this along the way. Now, there will be private investment in this as well. I'm not trying to get the private sector off the hook, but realistically, projects have to pencil, things have to work. There has to be enough upside for everybody to transform, right? So go ahead, Meg.
Great. And then the very last thing is, what we've done is we've identified, some zoning changes that could, or zoning updates, I should really say, that could really pave the way for this vision to be realized. They're not onerous, but so often, development gets stalled out by the uncertainty of not being supported by a town or by a town zoning code. So this is just one of those other ways that costs you nothing, that you can actually help enable and attract this kind of development to an area. And so we've just identified a couple of things, simple things like adjusting the minimum lot size, looking at allowing for shared parking, allowing quote unquote on-street parking on the private drives, adjusting some of the parking ratios that you have to right size them to the uses, adopting this as a master plan for the site, so that if developments are proposed that are in keeping with this, they're already compliant. We have no changes to the actual zoning areas on the map. But we did look at how to also amend your uses. So we looked at what uses were permitted by right currently. We think that list should and could be expanded. There are still plenty of opportunities for the Planning and Zoning Commission to oversee some of these uses. But it just, again, makes it easier to do the right thing. And we've always talked about, like, you want to make the good development the easy path. And then what we've done is we've kind of minimized the list of things that are permitted with special exception, which means that they still have to go through a review process. So we've just tried to shift some of these uses into the permitted by right.
So that one, page 2, we're going to add, just for the commission's knowledge, some definition. What does it mean? Because if you're not a land use person, what is permitted by special exception, or by, I don't know if we use special exception language, but and what is permitted by right? What does that mean? Okay, so you'll have that information inserted.
That's right. And then we also looked, the other area that is impacted by this study is the professional office overlay zone that exists along Main Street. And, you know, similarly, we had identified a couple of proposed revisions to this that could just make it a little bit easier, given the block sizes to do, or the lot sizes to do these kind of commercial conversions, and just adjusted the overlay zone uses that are permitted by right, to keep that in line. And that's it. Oh, last thing, sorry. Just the list, because we referred to the appendices. A couple of things that you guys will see in your copy. I'm not going to go through them right now, but we have the actual retail market analysis by our consultants, the Gibbs Planning Group. We have the memorandum on the commercial real estate from WZHA, from Sarah Woodworth. That has the whole the impact analysis for broken down by phase. So that chart that we showed was the summary, but she has all of the broken down by every development area. The notes from the community engagement, the full zoning recommendation memo, so not the summary I just shared with you. And then finally, as Rena indicated, we're working on this value analysis, and that would be that's the last piece. And that's it. Stop sharing, so I can see your faces and see if I've put you all to sleep.
I just want to thank you, Maggie. Great rundown as far as I'm concerned, and I know how complicated this is to boil down. So does the commission have any questions for Maggie? If you could just like maybe raise your hand.
Stunned silence.
Any comment?
Vicky
Oh,
has her
first-
hand raised.
First Selectman Tesoro.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see everyone here this evening. I don't really have any comments other than to say that I'll just echo what Rena said, that this was an unbelievable undertaking and a masterful job that was done by Stantec. And I think when you have the opportunity to really take a real deep dive into the study results, you'll agree. And you probably have some questions when you get an opportunity to do that. There's a lot of information here. There was certainly a lot of participation from our residents, from our businesses, from you, the commission, from other boards and commissions, a lot of input, and just very detailed and lots of research and a lot of good information that came from this. Certainly, when we can take this to the market, of course, we're hoping to get that investment. Rena talked about the public-private investment. There's a lot more to talk about here, but the importance of this, I can't understate what that importance is in so many different ways. And the end, not the end result, but the part of the study that shows what can happen here, what the possibilities are, I think are very exciting. And certainly I would like, and I think all of us would like to see something like this, take place on this property. So thank you. Just thanking Maggie again, thanking Gary and the entire team at Stantec.
I just wanted to note, phase 2, there is work to be done and we have a scope of that and we're going to be moving to that. But that does include sort of an executive summary and I want to call it a marketing package, but that's sort of layman's terms for what we're going to put together, but a package of information based on the audience. And so that's part of what we will do. I see Gary has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Rena, and Maggie, thank you. And it's really been a fabulous experience working on this plan with the town. Just a note, when the commissioners are looking at the illustrations that are in the report, note it looks overwhelming at first, but note in the plan that the interior of the mall spaces and the boxes, Lord & Taylor, JCPenney, Target, and Macy's, the movie theater, LA Fitness, those boxes, well, at least the mall core, are still there. And in that illustration, you'll see the interior corridors of the mall. So all of this is happening in and around the existing structures. So the mall continues to operate while all of this is happening around it. So you're seeing very minimal disruption to the operation of the boxes that are there and the interior of the mall. So just when you're looking at the plan, you'll see that quickly, but with the whirlwind tour you've gotten from Maggie today, you might not have noticed that right away. So
Also, Garrett, I think related to that is that we're really connecting outside and inside.
Right.
So the neighborhood or the district that gets built out and then the interior, and there's intentional work to move both the interior and exterior to be part of the neighborhood assets.
yeah, and important to note to this, the mall owners have seen these illustrations. And the response has been positive. Rena, is that fair to say?
Yes, and listen, I also want to say whoever owns the mall property ownership shifts and changes. This is a long-term plan that will incrementally, to use your word, Maggie, unfold. So there could be change in some of the ownership. You saw that there's multiple owners depending on structures. There's some people that own vertical, and that'll happen. And we will work with whoever owns whatever property and communicate. And so far, everyone, not just the Namdar folks, but also, you know, the Hudson Bay folks and the other people that are key to this property and to the area around this property, are on board. They're working with us. They see the value. Now, could there be some tweaks and changes in terms of what this looks like, or could this use go here and that use go there? Within the zoning, there's an allowance for that, as long as the proposals are in keeping with the vision, you know, the general vision of moving the district out and the kinds of uses that we'd like to see there. Okay, they could, if the senior housing wanted to move over to a you know, 20 yards here, or if the hotel decided it wants to go on the west side of the property or something like that, that's not something we wouldn't consider. Okay, it's just right now we looked at what are the most probable best uses for the real estate that we're unlocking and how we might see it unlock incrementally based on the data that we've received and the interviews we've had with the private sector. Okay. Is there any other comment before we thank you again, and to be continued? We'll get the date out, G, as soon as we get the date for the community meeting in March. We're working on that. That's going to be an in-person meeting. We'd like it to be in our common council chambers so that folks can come. We could use our nice new technology. We got to make sure Bill Chin's there, though. He has to be there. I don't trust anybody else there. Bill's got to be there. But to, you know, use our new technology to meet with the community and do that. And then again, there'll be an upcoming planning and zoning meeting as well, right?
Good.
So, Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, we'll move to the business report.
Hey, thanks, Maggie and Gary.
Thank you all.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure.
Have a
Thanks
great
for having
evening.
us. Yeah, have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. You're welcome to
Bye.
stay.
Would you like us to? Is
We'll
there?
watch it on
No.
TV.
You know, you're welcome to. I know Maggie's just been doing this since 8 o'clock this morning, probably 7. I've only been with her since 8. So you're welcome to stay all night with us.
I mean, it would be my pleasure. This has been a wonderful experience working with you, Rena. So,
I'm working with you too.
but I may head out before they turn the lights off in our
Yeah.
office.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye-bye.
If it's okay with our chair, I would go to the business,
Director's report.
yeah. So under business update, last meeting, we discussed the One Trefoil Drive development, which is in wetlands tonight at 7 p.m. That is a public hearing on that. And just to refresh everybody's memory, that's a 36,000 square foot commercial development, a grocer occupying 26,000, a full service restaurant, a fast food restaurant, and a medical user is proposed. They're in wetlands. We are being appealed, as folks know, by an adjacent property owner that we've experienced before. So this commission discussed how excited they were. If I could paraphrase what was talked about, I think how excited they were for this development, how they felt that this was not only a great area and corridor to put this on, given all the development both in Trumbull and Monroe on this corridor, but also that the uses and amenities are things that the community really wants. So not only is it a good place, the uses and the jobs and the tax revenue that would ensue. So the commission discussed writing a letter of support. There was a subcommittee of a less than majority of membership, which is proper, that worked on a letter. I want to just thank Justin, Layla, and Fred. That was our subcommittee. And I want to turn it over to Justin. Everyone should have received from Gia. She sent earlier, it was either yesterday or today, a draft of the letter of support for the development. The wetlands is, we can always add to this letter for planning and zoning. The letter was kept, to a certain amount of information based on the wetlands parameters, and the fact that it really is a wetlands hearing. Okay, so I'll just turn it over to Justin if I can. Justin, would you mind?
Yep, absolutely. I don't know if everybody got a chance to read it. I could read it here if you think it's important. But I will be hopping off just before 7 o'clock to join the public input section. If we vote unanimously on this or vote in majority, then we'll be able to submit this for the record.
Okay. Do you want to vote now?
Do folks want Justin to read this? Has everyone digested it? Is there any comment on the letter, I guess, first before a vote, just to make sure? Did everyone see it?
Yep.
I read the
Thought it
letter.
was good.
Yeah, it was clear, concise,
Right.
to the point. I'm in favor
Okay.
of it.
Back to you, Beryl.
Okay. Then do we have a motion to accept this report and have the letter forward to the commission?
I make a motion
I make a
that
motion.
the letter be accepted and moved forward to the commission.
Who was that?
Evelyn,
Oh, Evelyn, I didn't see her. And I think that Fred, I think your hand was up for seconding. Was it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Are all those in favor of moving ahead with this issue? Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. So you're on, Justin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the commission's action on this and support. I think it's very appropriate for your role, and I think your advocacy is just really, really helpful. To that end, I would love for us in a future meeting, perhaps next month's meeting, to discuss the zoning changes for the mall, and perhaps if you review part of our role under the charter and in our ambassador list, it is really interfacing and commenting on zoning that will enable economic development. So it might be great to do a letter to planning and zoning as well to support that, but we can talk about that. Maybe G will put that, if that's okay. Beryl can put that under the business section of the meeting for next month.
Okay.
So as it relates to the rest of my business report, I'm going to keep it really short because like Justin, I have to pop over to wetlands as well. So I just wanted to thank everybody here that came to Antonio's for the grand opening and ribbon cutting. We had a huge crowd. I thought the food was delicious. This chicken scarpiello I loved. I mean, it's probably one of the best I've had. They are very welcoming, hardworking. They're thrilled to be here in Trumbull. And it appears so far that the community is really supporting the restaurant and showing up. So thank you for being there. We had an excellent showing from our commission. at that event. I want to thank you and your spouses that supported us. And I know a lot of you, and including Evelyn, she's been talking it up with groups of folks she knows in the community and others. So to the degree that we can just stay positive and supportive of all of our businesses, but of especially some of our new businesses that are in a tough industry, particularly in this day and age, and we want them to succeed here in town. So thank you. I wanted to touch on a few other things just very quickly, and I'll do a more complete sort of business update in March. We really focused primarily on the mall today and
Rena, excuse me, I have to leave the meeting because I have to go over to the Board of Ed meeting. I just wanted, if I could just take 1 second, if you don't mind.
I was just going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, see that. Great minds don't think together. Anyways, I just want to let everyone know that we've heard from the corporate management of Stop and Shop. As you all know very well, we have Stop and Shop on Quality Street. Some good news to share with the community. And I don't have too many details on it yet, but that store is going to be renovated.
Amen.
Yeah. Beginning, I believe, sometime in the early summer. I don't have an exact date and I don't have many details, but I do want you to know that I have been in conversations with them for a year, you know, sharing my concerns about the store and really sharing the community's concerns about the store, and that they really needed to do something about it. And as I said, I've had sort of moved around the chain of command, and as we do in corporations. But we did receive some good news this week that renovation will occur. And as soon as I get more information, I've asked them for a press release that would give us, you know, dates. The actual amount of the renovation or the money that they're going to invest in the store is about $500,000. So we expect that it will be it should be a really full renovation of the inside of that store. But I don't have details to share with you at this point, but as soon as I do, I certainly will. But it's some good news for the town.
Thank you.
I hope everybody's happy. I will say they are in for building permits, so that's a very solid, this is concrete, right? So I know sometimes people, you know, question things, but when you start to apply for your building permit, that's very real, okay? And I just wanted to make mention that they have done some work to the exterior, to the roofing, to some of their other systems before. So this is focused internally to the space. So thank you, Vicky, for advocating. I know you were on them regularly, and that was important because initially you might remember that they weren't targeting our store for renovation immediately. And they've moved it up as a result of the advocacy from our leadership. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for your participation on this very important commission. I really appreciate it. So I will be, as I said, I'll be back in touch with you, hopefully with some more good news about other things that are percolating in town. Right now, we're like knee deep or head deep into the budget, which is always a fun time. So I'm off to the Board of Ed. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Rena.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beryl.
I want to just keep going, you know, on a few other important matters. Folks that have been following the redevelopment of the former gas station on Lake and Main, that project is moving along. They expect to be in the February 19th planning and zoning meeting if they can get all of their approvals that they're waiting on from the police commission and a few other things in time for that meeting. So that project is moving along, and you know, I expect that to be, once they receive their zoning approvals, they'll be fast and furious on the redevelopment of that site. So stay tuned, watch your agenda. Gia can let us know, let the commission know if it actually made the February 19th meeting in case any of you want to tune in. I want to just jump to Trumbull Center quickly. People have seen the buildings come down. They have seen that the work is underway. We did encourage them to put up some signage that talks about the businesses being open during construction, because we have heard from I have heard personally from at least 3 of the businesses that were concerned that some of their business was a little interrupted. So they're considering doing something like that. But I think we can all agree that the place already looks better and more open. So more to come for Trumbull Center. And I want to just touch base quickly. Let me just check the time. Oh yeah, on the medical office building, construction next to the Echo, Long Hill Market Plaza. That is moving along, as you see. There is a demolition that is coming of the house that is up on the hill. The house does have to go through the demolition delay committee because it is a pre-1940s house. So that committee is already working and evaluating if there's anything that they need to save or recommend to save from that structure. But that project is on an extremely tight development timeline, because I think I mentioned this in previous meetings, that the pediatric office has a tight timeline because their lease is expiring and their month to month is a 50% upcharge in their rent, which is obviously none of us, want to hear that, but and they're planning for some of that, but I don't think that can go on too long. So that is moving along. I think you know that we are also doing some significant improvements to the green space in Long Hill Green. That bid is already done, and as soon as the weather breaks, GPIC has been selected to do that work, and they're prepared to get that work underway. I think you also know that we will, in the summertime, hopefully, maybe a little later, because we have some DOT delays, but the trail connector down Whitley Avenue. So there's a lot still going on in Long Hill Green. But I think that once some of those things I just talked about, the new medical office, the green space, the final trail connections, the light is already operational, the sidewalks are in, I really think it's knitting that whole area together. And if you really look back, and I think you should do this, to our 2018 study, okay? And you look at what was outlined in that study, and now it is 2025, and yes, it is 7 years later, but in 7 years, the amount of change that's happened there and the amount of projects that will have been completed in that 7-year period, that is a lot. Okay, there's a lot that goes into each and every project, from funding it and financing it to approvals to activating to tenanting, all of those things, and you will see massive change there that's happened in those 7 years. So hats off to everybody involved, all of our departments, all of our development partners, property owners, and the community for supporting this. So that's all I have on my business report right now. I'll do a more thorough report to you on things going on for our March meeting. Do you have any questions for me?
Just one question about the Veterans Center. Is there any update? It seems like they stopped construction.
So yeah, so they're pretty much almost done with the phase 1 work. And the phase 1 work that was bid includes the foundation work, site work, the septic work, and some other some other site work. We now have to go out to bid for the vertical construction, which we are in the process of doing. They're developing the bid specifications for the vertical construction. As soon as they give me a copy of the bid package, I have to send that to the state. The state has to review it, which is probably a 2-week period, and then it will go out to bid after that. And then they will award the bid, and it will go to vertical construction. So the project is moving along. There's been fundraising underway for other kinds of things. I know you might have seen some of the social media, and I just want to recognize Fred for his involvement with the Rotary. If anyone else here is involved with the Rotary, raise your hand. I'm not sure who's everybody involved, but I know Fred is. And they just turned over a check, Fred, am I right, of 50,000 for the project?
Yes, that's correct. 50,000 to help support that.
Okay. So that's the close of my report. I'm not going to do a community development report or a planning report or a grant report for you this meeting. I'll give you a full report in March, but I want to make sure that we have time just to ask if there's any updates from the BRBC stuff and the other stuff that's on the agenda. So Beryl, I'll turn it back to you in case you have anything else too.
Is there a report from BRBC?
I could share some information. So first, the BRBC and the Trumbull Chamber also have submitted a letter of support for the One Trefoil Drive project. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, and we're here to help as well. The chamber is co-hosting a Governor Lamont in February, on February 18th at Fairfield University. There's information to register on our website. And on March 20th, they are, excuse me, are hosting an Engage and Grow Expo at the arena. A well-attended multiple chamber event. We look forward to seeing as many community and business support that we could get. Those are all the notes we have to share at this meeting.
Good, all sounds good. All right, are there members of the community who want to speak?
Bill, is there any attendees left? Okay. Doesn't look like it, I guess, right?
I can't hear.
There are no attendees at the moment.
No community input. Okay, well, if there's anything else then that any would like to discuss, ask, comment on. All right, if not, we wish Justin well at her next meeting. And can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll see you next month. And there'll be lots to report on next month.
If you're really bored and want to attend the inland wetlands meeting next, you can get all of the information on the website to attend. It'll be fun.
Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Enjoy.